Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. The restaurant hummed with quiet conversation as Royce Barlow adjusted his tie, a rare accessory for a man who spent his days under car hoods. 10 years of marriage to Mary, and he'd never felt more like a stranger to her than tonight. Everything okay? Royce asked, watching Mary's fingers hover over her phone screen for the 5th time since they'd ordered. Mary looked up, her smile not reaching her eyes. Of course, why wouldn't it be? It's our anniversary. The waiter arrived with their entrees, placing a perfectly cooked steak in front of Royce and a salad before Mary. 10 years, Royce said, raising his glass of bourbon. Here's to the next 10. Mary touched her glass to his, the crystal making a hollow sound. 10 years, she echoed, taking a small sip of her wine. Her phone buzzed. Mary's fingers twitched, but she didn't pick it up. And Natalie? She seemed upset this morning before school, Royce said. Teenage drama. You know how girls are. Royce nodded, though he didn't really know. What he did know was that in the past year, Natalie had grown increasingly withdrawn. The bubbly child who'd once begged him to teach her how to change oil was now a quiet teenager who flinched when doors slammed. I think she's having trouble with some kids at school, Royce ventured. Maybe we should talk to her counselor. Mary speared a piece of lettuce. She's fine. Stop hovering. I'm not hovering. I'm concerned. There's a difference. Mary sighed. This is why we have date nights, Royce. To talk about us, not the kids. Kid. Singular, Royce corrected, a small smile playing at his lips. Unless there's something you want to tell me? Mary didn't return the smile. No, definitely not. When they arrived home, Natalie sat on the living room couch, textbooks spread around her. She looked up as they entered, her dark hair falling across her face, obscuring one eye. How was dinner? She asked, her voice soft. Fine, Mary answered before Royce could speak. Why aren't you in bed? It's almost 11. I have a biology test tomorrow. Natalie's eyes flicked to Royce, then back to her mother. I needed to study. Well, finish up quickly. I don't want to see the light on under your door past midnight, Mary said, already heading for the stairs. Royce hung back, watching Natalie gather her books. Need any help? I'm not much for biology, but I can quiz you. A small smile formed on Natalie's lips. Thanks, but I'm good. Just one more chapter. Everything okay at school? Royce asked, keeping his voice low, and Natalie's smile faltered. Yeah, fine. You know you can talk to me, right? About anything. Natalie nodded, not meeting his eyes. I know. Royce. Mary called from upstairs. Are you coming to bed? On my way, he called back. He squeezed Natalie's shoulder gently. Good night, kiddo. Knock him dead on that test tomorrow. Night, Royce, Natalie whispered, and for a fleeting moment, Royce thought he saw tears in her eyes. But before he could ask, she'd turned away as Royce climbed the stairs to join his wife. A sense of unease settled in his stomach. Something was wrong in his house, in his family. He just couldn't put his finger on what had a week passed. Royce worked late at the auto shop, finishing a transmission rebuild that had proven more complex than anticipated. He texted Mary that he'd be home around 8, and oh rush, came her reply. Natalie and I ordered pizza. When Royce finally walked through the front door, the house was quiet. A half-empty pizza box sat on the kitchen counter next to a bottle of wine that hadn't been there that morning. One glass beside it, lipstick on the rim. Mary, he called. In here, she answered from the living room. Royce found her curled on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She wore black leggings and an oversized sweater that slipped off one shoulder. Where's Natalie? Royce asked, bending to kiss Mary's cheek. She turned her head slightly, his lips catching the corner of her mouth instead. At Amber's for a study group. She's sleeping over. Mary set her phone aside. Sit down. I need to talk to you about something. Royce's stomach tightened. He lowered himself into the armchair across from her. Sounds serious. Mary took a deep breath, tucking her legs beneath her. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately. About us. About what I want. Okay, Royce said slowly. We've been together for 10 years, Royce. 10 good years, mostly. But I feel like I'm changing, evolving. And I don't want to lose you, but I also don't want to lose myself. Royce leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I'm not following, Mary. I want to try an open marriage. The words hung in the air between them. Royce stared at her, waiting for more, for an explanation that would make sense of the knot forming in his chest. An open marriage, he repeated. You want to sleep with other people. Mary winced at his bluntness. It's not just about sex, Royce. It's about connection, about experiencing different dynamics with different people. We'd still be married, still be partners. Just not exclusive. Royce stood up, pacing to the window. Is there someone else already? He asked, his back to her. That's not what this is about. That's not an answer. Mary sighed. No, there's no one else. Not yet. Royce turned to face her. Not yet, he echoed. I'm trying to be honest with you, Royce. I could have just cheated like half the people we know, but I respect you too much for that. Respect. The word tasted bitter on his tongue. So you respect me enough not to lie, but not enough to honor our vows. Mary stood up, her cheeks flushing. Our vows. Is that what this is about? Some words we said a decade ago, when we were different people. They weren't just words to me. Well, maybe that's part of the problem. Mary crossed her arms. You've always been so rigid, so bound by rules and expectations. Being faithful to my wife isn't rigidity, Mary. It's decency. Mary laughed, a sound with no humor in it. There it is. The moral superiority. Always the good guy, aren't you, Royce? Never a step out of line. Royce felt his anger rising, but forced it down. What's really going on here? He asked quietly. Because this doesn't sound like you. Maybe you don't know me as well as you think you do. Maybe I don't. Royce agreed. But I know this isn't about an open marriage. It's about something else, something you're not telling me. Mary's face hardened. Fine. Think what you want. I'm going to bed. She started toward the stairs, then paused, looking back at him. And just so you know, I wasn't asking permission. I was informing you of my decision. With that, she disappeared upstairs, leaving Royce standing in the living room, the ground shifting beneath his feet. 3 weeks passed in a Cold War. Mary spent most evenings out, returning late with excuses about yoga workshops and client consultations. Royce threw himself into work, expanding the auto shop's hours and taking on complex jobs that kept his mind from wandering to darker places. Natalie moved between them like a ghost, quiet and watchful, retreating to her room when voices rose. Royce knew something was wrong the moment he stepped into the house. The mail sat scattered across the kitchen counter, and among the bills and advertisements lay a thick envelope with his name printed in formal type. He picked it up, his mechanic's hands seeming too large and rough for the crisp official paper inside. As he read, the words blurred together, but their meaning cut through with crystal clarity. Mary was filing for divorce. The front door opened. Footsteps in the hallway. Then Mary appeared in the kitchen doorway, her yoga mat slung over one shoulder. You're home early, she said, her voice neutral. Royce held up the papers. Were you planning to tell me? Or just let the courts do it for you? Mary set her mat down, her movements deliberate. I was going to tell you tonight, before or after you accused me of abuse. The word felt like acid in his mouth. I didn't. Mary began, then stopped, recalibrating. My lawyer advised me that if I wanted full custody of Natalie, we needed to establish grounds. Grounds, Royce repeated. So you invented abuse allegations. Not invented. Mary's voice hardened. You've been controlling Royce. Always watching, always questioning. The constant checking up on Natalie, the interrogations about where I've been. It took me years to recognize the pattern. Royce stared at her, unable to reconcile the woman before him with the one he'd married. You're talking about concern, about caring where my family is and how they're doing. I'm talking about emotional manipulation, Mary countered. It stops now. Royce stood slowly, the chair scraping against the tile floor. Where's Natalie? At a friend's. And that's where she's staying until this is settled. Mary crossed her arms. My lawyer advised me to keep her away from you for now. Your lawyer, Royce said quietly, is helping you destroy a family based on lies. It's not a lie if that's how I experienced it. Experienced it? Royce's voice rose despite his efforts to stay calm. This isn't some yoga philosophy, Mary. These are serious accusations that could ruin my life, my relationship with Natalie. I'm doing what's best for my daughter. Our daughter, Royce corrected. I've been her father in every way that matters for 8 years. But not legally, Mary said, a cold smile touching her lips. You never adopted her, remember? We talked about it, but you always had an excuse. Too busy, too expensive, not necessary. The truth hit Royce hard. She'd planned this, laid the groundwork years ago. All those times she'd mentioned adoption and he'd put it off, thinking there was plenty of time, that their family was secure without the paperwork. You need to pack some things, Mary said. The papers state you need to vacate the house within 48 hours. This is my house too, Royce said. Actually, it's not. Check the deed. It's in my name. Another calculated move he'd missed. The house had been purchased during a time when his credit was recovering from a business loan gone bad. Putting it in Mary's name had made sense then. I want to talk to Natalie, Royce said. Not happening, Mary replied. Not until the hearing. The preliminary hearing came faster than Royce expected. He sat beside his attorney, Dave Reynolds, a college friend who'd gone into family law. Across the aisle, Mary sat with her lawyer, a sharp-featured woman in an expensive suit, her graying hair cut in a severe bob. The judge, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, reviewed the documents before him with a neutral expression. Mrs. Barlow is seeking an emergency protective order for herself and her minor child, citing a pattern of emotional abuse by the respondent. Mr. Barlow contests these allegations. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, both lawyers answered in unison. Mrs. Barlow, can you describe the nature of this alleged abuse? Mary stood, smoothing her conservative navy dress. Royce noticed she'd removed her usual dramatic makeup, opting for a natural look that emphasized her vulnerability. Your Honor, over the past several years, my husband has demonstrated increasingly controlling behavior. He monitors my whereabouts constantly, questions my daughter inappropriately about my activities, and creates an atmosphere of constant surveillance in our home. The judge nodded. Can you provide specific examples? Of course. Mary's voice trembled slightly. He frequently checks my phone without permission. He calls my yoga studio to verify I'm teaching when I say I am. He's isolated me from friends, particularly male friends, implying inappropriate relationships where none exist. Royce gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles whitening. Dave placed a warning hand on his arm. And regarding your daughter, the judge prompted. Mary dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. He's been inappropriately interested in her social life, asking detailed questions about her friends, particularly boys. He insists on driving her to and from activities when I'm available to do so. Recently, my daughter confided that she feels uncomfortable with his attention. The lie was so blatant, so contrary to everything Royce knew about his relationship with Natalie, that he couldn't stay silent. That's not true, he said, rising to his feet. Natalie and I, Mr. Barlow, the judge interrupted sharply. You'll have your turn to speak. Please sit down. Royce sat, his face burning with anger and humiliation. Given the documentation provided and the serious nature of these allegations, I'm granting a temporary restraining order, the judge announced. Mr. Barlow is to remain at least 500 feet from Mrs. Barlow and the minor child until the full hearing. He is to vacate the family residence immediately if he has not already done so. The gavel fell with a crack that echoed in Royce's chest. Mary didn't look at him as she gathered her things, but he caught the small, satisfied curve of her lips as she leaned toward her attorney. Outside the courtroom, Royce leaned against the wall, trying to steady his breathing. This is just temporary, Dave assured him. We'll fight it at the full hearing. Get statements from people who know you and Natalie together. Find witnesses who can speak to Mary's character. Royce nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Across the hallway, Mary stood with her lawyer. As if sensing his gaze, she looked up, meeting his eyes across the polished floor. There was no triumph in her expression, no guilt or regret, just cold determination that in that moment. Royce understood that the woman he'd married, the woman he'd loved for 10 years, was gone if she'd ever existed at all. In her place stood a stranger who was willing to destroy him to get what she wanted. Royce's new apartment felt like a hotel room, impersonal, temporary, a place to sleep and nothing more. A single bedroom above a convenience store, with thin walls that let in the sounds of traffic and late-night customers. His phone buzzed. A text from Arlen. "You alive in there?" Royce managed a small smile. Arlen Chastain had been reaching out daily since the hearing, offering everything from legal advice to a spare bedroom in his crowded house. Royce had declined the latter, but appreciated the concern. Still breathing, he texted back. The shop. His livelihood, his pride. Barlow and Sons Auto Repair had been his father's business, passed down to Royce and his brother Michael. Now customers were dwindling. Word spread fast in small communities, and the whispers of abuse allegations traveled faster than facts. Around 10, the bell above the front door jingled. Jim Kendricks, his lead mechanic, appeared in the doorway. "Boss, there's someone here to see you." "Who?" Jim hesitated. "Mrs. Peterson." Gina Peterson, Mary's closest friend, a fellow yoga instructor who'd been a fixture at their dinner table for years. She'd been the first to distance herself when the allegations surfaced. "Send her in," Royce said, bracing himself. Gina entered cautiously, as if stepping into a lion's cage. She'd always been thin, but now she looked gaunt, her collarbone visible above her tank top. "Royce," she said, stopping just inside the door. "Gina." He didn't stand, didn't offer her a seat. She fidgeted with the strap of her purse. I wanted to say I'm sorry about everything that's happening." "Are you?" Royce asked, keeping his voice neutral. "Of course. It's awful, all of it. And yet you've been telling people I'm dangerous. That women shouldn't bring their cars here." Gina flushed. "I never said dangerous." "What did you say then?" I told someone I wasn't comfortable recommending your shop anymore. Given the circumstances. The circumstances being the lies my wife is spreading." Gina's expression hardened slightly. Mary wouldn't lie about something like this. Wouldn't she? Royce leaned forward. "You've known me for 8 years, Gina. Have you ever, once, seen me be controlling or abusive? To Mary or Natalie or anyone?" She looked away. "Sometimes these things aren't obvious. Pretty damn obvious to the person living it, I'd think." Royce stood up. "What do you want, Gina? Because if you came here to ease your conscience, you can save it." "I came to tell you that Natalie's miserable," Gina said, meeting his eyes again. "She's not eating, barely sleeping. Mary's got her seeing a therapist 3 times a week, but it's not helping." The mention of Natalie hit Royce like a fist to the gut. How is she supposed to be when her mother's turned her life upside down? When she's being forced to lie about the only father she's known since she was 7? "So you're saying Natalie's lying too?" Gina challenged. "I'm saying Natalie's a 15-year-old girl caught in her mother's web. I don't blame her for anything." Royce circled the desk, standing directly in front of Gina. "Tell her I miss her. Tell her I'm fighting for her. Can you do that? Or are you too afraid of Mary?" Gina stepped back. "I shouldn't have come." After she left, Royce sat motionless, the pain of Natalie's situation washing over him in waves. He tried texting her, but his messages went unanswered. He'd driven past her school once, hoping to catch a glimpse of her, only to remember the restraining order that kept him at least 500 feet away. The door opened again, and Arlen rolled in, his wheelchair navigating the tight space with practiced ease. A paper bag sat in his lap, the bottom spotted with grease. "Burgers for Max," he announced. "And don't give me that not hungry crap. You look like hell." Royce mustered a weak smile for his oldest friend. "Thanks for the compliment." "So," Arlen said, unwrapping his burger, "you need to fight back, Royce. Not just in court. You need to start digging into Mary's story. Find the holes. My lawyer's handling it. Your lawyer's a decent guy, but he's overwhelmed. Mary hired Goldman and Associates. They specialize in high-conflict divorces. They'll bury your lawyer in paperwork while they build their case." Royce sighed. "What am I supposed to do, Arlen? Hire a private investigator I can't afford? The shop's barely staying afloat as it is. You don't need a PI. You've got me." Arlen tapped his temple. "Army intelligence for 8 years before this." He patted his wheelchair. "I might not be able to chase anyone down, but I can still track digital footprints. I'm not asking you to spy on my wife. Not asking, I'm offering. And it's not spying if it's finding the truth." Arlen crumpled his burger wrapper. "Look, Royce, I've known you since we were 10. I've known Mary since you started dating. She's been playing a long game, and you need to figure out what it is before she destroys you completely. Even if you did find something, what good would it do? The judge already thinks I'm an abuser. One judge made one preliminary ruling based on the evidence he had. Arlen countered. Give him new evidence. He might make a different ruling. And if he doesn't, if Mary wins, then at least you'll know you fought with everything you had. Arlen's eyes, always intense, bored into Royce's. You saved my life in that quarry when we were kids. Let me help save yours now. Royce looked at his oldest friend, remembering the day Arlen referenced. Two boys, 12 years old, swimming in an abandoned quarry. Arlen diving in head first, not knowing the water was too shallow. Royce dragging his unconscious body to shore, performing CPR he'd learned in Boy Scouts until help arrived. Arlen had survived, but lost the use of his legs. Okay, Royce said finally, but we do this legally. Nothing that could backfire in court. Scout's honor, Arlen said, raising 3 fingers in a mock salute. That night, as Royce lay in his narrow bed, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It's Natalie. Got a burner phone. Mom took mine. I don't believe what she's saying about you. I miss you too. Royce's hands shook as he typed his reply. I miss you too, kiddo. So much. Are you okay? No. She's making me see Dr. Warner. He keeps asking about you. If you ever touched me weird or said scary things. I told her no, but Mom gets mad that Royce's stomach churned. You tell the truth, always. I'll fix this somehow, I promised. I'm scared. Royce pointed 3 simple words that broke his heart. I know. Me too. But we'll get through this. Save this number. Text me anytime. Delete the messages after. I will. I have to go. Mom's checking on me a lot. I love you. Nat, stay strong. Love you too. Royce clutched the phone to his chest, tears burning his eyes. His stepdaughter was scared and alone, being coached to lie about him, and he was powerless to help her. The injustice of it fueled a rage he'd never felt before, a cold, hard determination that crystallized into a single thought. Mary wouldn't win. Not this time. Not when Natalie's well-being was at stake. Arlen's living room resembled a command center, with multiple computer screens and electronics Royce couldn't identify. Welcome to the war room, Arlen said, gesturing to a chair beside his setup. Let's start with what we know about Mary's past. Where'd she live before Colorado? Royce sat, trying to organize his thoughts. Arizona. Phoenix. She moved here after her divorce from Frank Rhodes, Natalie's father. And before Arizona, California, I think. San Diego. Arlen's fingers flew across his keyboard. How'd Frank die? Car accident. About a year after the divorce. He was driving in the mountains, went off the road in a storm. And Mary got full custody in the divorce. Yes, Frank had a gambling problem, used to disappear for days. The courts gave him supervised visitation only. Arlen made notes. What about before Frank? Any other marriages or serious relationships? Royce thought back to conversations over the years. One ex-fiancée in California. She never talked about him much. I got the impression he was abusive. Name? Tim. No, Tom. Tom Wallace, I think. More typing. And her maiden name? Sanderson. Mary Elizabeth Sanderson. I'll run some searches, see what pops up. It might take a few days. We don't have a few days. The full hearing's in 2 weeks. Then I'll work faster. Arlen looked up, his expression serious. In the meantime, you need to stay clean. No contact with Mary or Natalie, except through your lawyer. No driving by the house. No showing up at Natalie's school. Nothing that could violate that restraining order. A week before the hearing, Arlen called. I've got something, he said, his voice tight with excitement. Get over here. Now. Arlen's living room was a storm of papers and printouts, organized in stacks that made sense only to him. He barely looked up when Royce entered, gesturing to the chair beside him. Look at this, he said, pushing a folder across the desk. Royce opened it to find newspaper clippings and printed court records. The top article, from a Phoenix newspaper dated 7 years ago, bore the headline, Local Man Accuses Ex-Wife of Fabricating Abuse Claims. The man was Frank Rhodes, Natalie's father. Keep reading, Arlen urged. Royce scanned the article. According to Frank, Mary had invented abuse allegations to gain full custody of Natalie, then 6 years old. He claimed to have evidence that Mary had done the same to a previous partner in California. The article ended by noting that Frank was unable to present this evidence in court and lost his custody appeal. "There's more," Arlen said, passing another folder. "I found court records from San Diego. Mary was briefly engaged to a Thomas Wallace. She filed a restraining order against him, claiming emotional abuse and threatening behavior. He counterfiled, alleging she was setting him up. What happened? She won. He lost his job as a high school teacher over the allegations. 6 months later, he committed suicide. Royce felt sick. Jesus. Yeah. Arlen rubbed his eyes. I'm still digging, but there's a pattern here, Royce. Mary finds a man, builds a life with him, then destroys him when she's ready to move on. The question is why? Money, Royce said quietly. She got alimony from Frank, plus his life insurance when he died. She's asking for the house, half my business, and alimony in our divorce. There's one more thing, Arlen said, hesitating. I found Frank's parents. His mother, Evangeline Rhodes, is still alive. Lives in Tucson. She might know more about what happened with Frank. You think she'd talk to me? Only one way to find out. Arlen slid a piece of paper with a phone number across the desk. She's Natalie's grandmother. She might have as much stake in this as you do. Later that evening, Royce sat in his apartment, staring at his phone. The number for Evangeline Rhodes glowed on the screen. With a deep breath, he pressed dial. The phone rang 3 times before a woman answered, her voice sharp and clear despite her age. Hello, Mrs. Rhodes? My name is Royce Barlow. I'm Mary's husband, she interrupted. Yes, I know who you are, Mr. Barlow. The question is, why are you calling me? Royce explained the situation, the divorce filing, the abuse allegations, the restraining order keeping him from Natalie. As he spoke, he heard Evangeline's breathing change, becoming more controlled, as if she was working to contain strong emotion. History repeating, she said when he finished. Just like with Frank, just like with that poor teacher in California. You knew about Thomas Wallace. I made it my business to know everything about the woman who destroyed my son, Evangeline replied. Frank discovered her pattern too late. By then, she had full custody of Natalie and had convinced the courts he was dangerous. The newspaper article mentioned evidence Frank had. What was it? Letters from Wallace's sister, detailing Mary's manipulation. Records of Mary's spending that didn't match her claims of financial abuse. It wasn't enough. Mary had journal entries, therapist reports, even a teacher's statement about Natalie's concerning behavior after visits with Frank. Manufactured evidence, Royce said. Precisely. Evangeline paused. Mr. Barlow. Royce, please. Royce, I haven't seen my granddaughter since she was 6 years old. Mary cut off all contact after Frank died. I've sent birthday cards, Christmas gifts, but I don't know if Natalie ever received them. I've tried legal channels to establish grandparent visitation rights, but without success. I'm sorry. Natalie's never mentioned knowing she has a grandmother. I don't think Mary told her. That doesn't surprise me. Evangeline's voice hardened, but I've never stopped fighting for her. And I won't stop now. Tell me what you need from me. Anything that shows Mary's pattern. Anything that might help a judge see what she's doing. I have boxes of documents. Frank's journals, the evidence he collected, my own records of attempted contact with Natalie. I can send them overnight. Relief flooded through Royce. That would be incredibly helpful, Mrs. Rhodes. Evangeline, she corrected. And Royce? When you and not if, when I want to see my granddaughter. I'll make sure of it, Royce promised, meaning every word. The package from Evangeline Rhodes arrived 2 days later, a large box containing carefully organized folders of documents, photos, and journals. Royce spent the entire weekend poring over them with Arlen and Dave, building a timeline of Mary's manipulations. Frank's journals were particularly illuminating, documenting the slow deterioration of his relationship with Mary in a way that mirrored Royce's own experience. The initial happiness, the gradual distance, the unexplained absences, and finally, the shocking accusations that left Frank reeling. It's like reading my own story, Royce said, setting aside the final journal. Except Frank didn't have anyone helping him put the pieces together. "We need more than old documents," Royce said finally. "We need current evidence. Something that shows Mary's lying now, not just that she's lied in the past." "I've been thinking about that," Dave said. "Mary drives your old Chevrolet, right? The one you rebuilt last year." Royce nodded. "She liked the color. Did you install any aftermarket features? GPS tracking, dash cam, anything like that?" "No, but—" Royce paused, remembering. "I installed a new stereo system with hands-free calling. It has a microphone built into the rearview mirror." Dave and Arlen exchanged a glance. "Can you access recordings from that mic?" Arlen asked. "Not remotely, but if I had physical access to the car, I could download the audio files. The system keeps a backup of all calls in case of connection errors. Recording someone without their knowledge is legally questionable. Using those recordings in court even more so," Dave warned. "What if we're not recording new conversations, just accessing ones that are already stored by the system?" Arlen countered. "A system Royce installed and technically owns? I need access to the car," Royce said. "With the restraining order, I can't go near the house." "When does Mary teach yoga?" Arlen asked. "Tuesday and Thursday evenings, Saturday mornings." "And the car would be where?" "The yoga studio parking lot. It's a small lot behind the building." Arlen nodded slowly. "So, theoretically, someone could access the car while she's teaching. Someone who knows how to extract the audio files." "Theoretically," Royce agreed, understanding Arlen's implication. "But that someone would be taking a big risk. Some risks are worth taking for the people we care about." Arlen's gaze was steady. "Besides, I don't have much left to lose. My military career's over. I'm not married, no kids. Just a disabled vet with too much time on his hands and a talent for electronics." "Arlen, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm offering. And before either of you argue, remember I was extracting data from secured systems in Afghanistan. A car stereo isn't exactly a challenge." 2 days later, Arlen called Royce at the shop. "Got them," he said without preamble. "And Royce, you're going to want to hear these." Royce, Arlen, and Dave gathered in Dave's office, the door locked, the blinds drawn. Arlen connected his laptop to speakers, navigating through folders of audio files. "I pulled everything from the past month," he explained. "Most of it's mundane calls to clients, conversations with Natalie, that sort of thing. But there are a few that stand out." He clicked on a file labeled M+W_0 4.15. Mary's voice filled the room, slightly distorted but clearly recognizable. "Doesn't suspect a thing." The judge bought the abuse angle completely. A man's voice answered, deep and slightly slurred. "You're something else, babe. Had me convinced you were really scared of the guy." "Please," Mary scoffed. "Royce wouldn't hurt a fly. He's pathetically devoted. That's what makes this so easy. Still feels kind of harsh, destroying the dude like this. He'll survive. Men like Royce always land on their feet. Besides, he should have signed the adoption papers when I asked. Would have made this much more lucrative. How's the kid handling it?" Mary's voice turned irritated. "Natalie's being difficult. Keeps saying she misses him, that he never did anything wrong. I've had to get creative with the therapist." "Creative how?" "Let's just say Dr. Warner gets good results when properly motivated. He's helping Natalie recover memories she didn't know she had." Laughter from the man. "You're evil, woman. Sexy as hell, but evil. You love it." Mary purred. "Just think, once the settlement comes through, we can start looking at properties in San Diego. Beachfront like we talked about. Can't wait. Though I still don't get why we need to move all the way to California. Denver's got plenty of rich suckers for you to hook. Too many people know me here now. And I've got unfinished business in San Diego." The audio ended. Royce sat motionless, hands clenched on the arms of his chair, knuckles white. The cold confirmation of Mary's manipulation, her casual dismissal of the damage she was causing, the revelation that she was coaching Natalie to lie was all worse than he'd imagined. "There's more," Arlen said quietly, clicking on another file. This one captured Mary on the phone with someone she called Dr. Warner. The conversation was brief, but damning. Mary explicitly asking the therapist to find evidence of grooming behavior in his sessions with Natalie. The third recording was the most valuable Mary and the man identified as Wade, discussing the fraudulent nature of her previous divorces. Frank almost caught me, Mary said. Had a whole file of evidence. I panicked, thought everything was falling apart. What happened? Let's just say mountain roads can be treacherous in the rain. Wade's whistle was low and appreciative. Damn, baby. Remind me never to cross you. Just keep playing your part, and you won't have to worry about that. When the last recording ended, the office fell silent. Dave was the first to speak, his legal mind already assessing the implications. This is explosive, he said. The mention of Frank's accident alone could trigger a police investigation. But using it in family court is complex. The recordings were obtained without consent. In Royce's car, using equipment he installed and owns, Arlen interrupted. And in Colorado, only one party needs to consent to a recording if there's reasonable suspicion of criminal activity, which there clearly is. Dave nodded slowly. I'll need to research precedents, but I think we can get these admitted. Combined with Evangeline's documentation and Frank's journals, it paints a compelling picture of Mary's pattern of behavior. As they left, Royce's phone buzzed with a text from the burner number. Need to see you. Emergency. Can you come to your shop tonight at 8? Please. Alarm shot through Royce. Natalie had never asked to meet in person before, knowing it could violate the restraining order. Something must be seriously wrong that I'll be there. Are you safe? For now. Don't tell anyone I'm coming. Not even Arlen. The request was odd, but Royce respected it. Just me. 8 p.m. Be careful. The shop was dark and quiet when Royce arrived at 7:45. He unlocked the side door, disabling the alarm system, and turned on only the small desk lamp in his office. The less attention drawn to his presence, the better. Precisely 8 o'clock. A soft tap came at the side door. Royce opened it to find Natalie standing in the shadows, a backpack slung over one shoulder. She looked smaller than he remembered, her face pale and drawn, dark circles under her eyes. Natalie, he breathed, fighting the urge to pull her into a hug. Come in quickly. She slipped past him, her movements wary, like a hunted animal. Once inside, she stood uncertainly in the center of the shop floor, clutching her backpack to her chest. Are you okay? Royce asked, leading her to his office where the light was better. Has something happened? Natalie shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. I can't do it anymore, Royce. I can't keep lying. Lying about what, sweetheart? Everything. She sank into his desk chair, her thin shoulders slumping. Mom's been making me tell Dr. Warner that you did things, said things, awful things that never happened. Royce knelt beside the chair, bringing himself to her eye level. I know, Nat. I know what she's been doing. Surprise flickered across her face. You do. We've been gathering evidence. There's a hearing tomorrow morning that might change everything. He hesitated, then asked gently, Is that why you wanted to see me? To tell me about the therapist? Natalie reached for her backpack, unzipping it with trembling fingers. Not just tell you. Show you. She withdrew a tablet and powered it on. Mom doesn't know I have this. It's an old one she thinks doesn't work anymore. But I fixed it like you showed me. And I've been recording things. She opened a video file and handed the tablet to Royce. The screen showed Mary's bedroom, filmed from what appeared to be a partially open closet door. Mary paced back and forth, her face flushed with anger. Natalie sat on the edge of the bed, head bowed. You told him what? Mary's voice was cold with fury. I told Dr. Warner the truth, Natalie replied, her voice small but defiant. That Royce never touched me, never said anything inappropriate. That he's been a good dad. Mary's hand lashed out, striking Natalie across the face with enough force to knock her sideways. Royce flinched at the impact, his hands tightening on the tablet. He is not your dad, Mary snarled. And you will tell Dr. Warner exactly what we practiced, or I swear to God, Natalie, I will send you to that military school in Utah. How would you like that? No phone, no friends, just drill sergeants and discipline. Is that what you want? Natalie, holding her reddened cheek, shook her head. Then you'll go back tomorrow and tell Dr. Warner that you've been afraid to tell the whole truth. That Royce touched you in ways that made you uncomfortable, that he said things that scared you, that he threatened you if you ever told anyone. But it's not true. Natalie whispered. It doesn't matter if it's true. Mary shouted. What matters is that I get what I deserve after wasting 10 years with that loser. He doesn't deserve you, doesn't deserve this house, doesn't deserve anything. The video continued for another minute, Mary alternating between threats and cold instructions on exactly what Natalie should tell the therapist. When it ended, Royce set the tablet down carefully, aware that his hands were shaking with suppressed rage. When was this recorded? He asked, his voice tight. Yesterday, Natalie said, wiping at fresh tears. After my session with Dr. Warner, I told him the truth, and he called Mom immediately. Has she hit you before? The question was difficult to ask, the possible answer even harder to hear. Natalie hesitated, then nodded. Not often. Usually she just threatens. But since the divorce started, she's been different. Scarier. You're not going back there, Royce said, the decision instant and unshakable. Not after this. But the restraining order. To hell with the restraining order. Royce stood, pacing the small office. We're taking this recording to the police right now. Then to my lawyer. No judge will leave you in her custody after seeing this. She'll be arrested, Natalie said, her voice small but certain. For hitting me, for making me lie. Yes. Royce didn't sugarcoat it. Mary had forfeited any right to protection or consideration the moment she'd struck Natalie. Are you okay with that? Natalie was quiet for a long moment, her young face solemn with a decision no 15-year-old should have to make. Yes, she said finally. I just want to stop. I want to come home. Something cracked in Royce's chest at her words. Home. Not Mary's house, but with him. Despite everything Mary had done to poison their relationship, Natalie still saw him as home. I'm going to make that happen, he promised. Whatever it takes. As they prepared to leave for the police station, Natalie asked a question that had clearly been weighing on her. What will happen to me? If Mom goes to jail, that depends on a lot of factors. But I'll fight to keep you with me. And if the courts won't allow that, there's your grandmother. Grandmother. Natalie's brow furrowed. Mom always said her parents were dead. Not your mom's mother. Your dad's. Evangeline Rhodes. She's been trying to contact you for years. Natalie's eyes widened. I have a grandmother. Why didn't Mom tell me? That's a long story, one she can tell you herself soon. But she loves you very much, and she's been fighting for you as hard as I have. For the first time that evening, a genuine smile crossed Natalie's face. The simple joy of discovering family she never knew existed seemed to momentarily outweigh the gravity of their situation. The police station hummed with late-night activity. Royce and Natalie sat in a small interview room, the video from Natalie's tablet playing on a department laptop for the third time. Detective Morales, a compact woman with shrewd eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, watched without expression. When the video ended, she closed the laptop and regarded them both thoughtfully. You understand the seriousness of these allegations, she said. Not a question, but a statement. We do, Royce answered. And we understand there'll be questions about the restraining order violation. I take full responsibility for that. Natalie contacted me, said it was an emergency, and I made the decision to meet her. Given the content of this video, I think we can work with the DA to address that issue. She turned to Natalie. Are you willing to make a formal statement about what's been happening at home? About your mother pressuring you to lie about Mr. Barlow? Natalie glanced at Royce, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, she said, her voice quiet but firm. I want to tell the truth. Good. Morales made a note in her file. For tonight, we need to address your immediate safety. Given the allegations of physical abuse and coercion, you can't return to your mother's home. She can stay with me, Royce said immediately. Morales shook her head. Not possible with the restraining order in place, even though we now have evidence it was obtained fraudulently. For tonight, we'll need to place her with Child Protective Services. Natalie's face fell. Like a foster home. An emergency placement just for tonight, Morales assured her. Mr. Barlow has a hearing tomorrow morning, correct? With this new evidence, there's a good chance the restraining order will be lifted. At that point, temporary custody arrangements can be discussed. There is one other option, Morales said, glancing between them. If there's a family member, a grandparent, aunt, uncle who could take temporary custody. Her paternal grandmother, Royce said. Evangeline Rhodes. She lives in Tucson, but I've been in contact with her recently. She's been trying to establish a relationship with Natalie for years. Morales considered this. Would she be willing to come to Denver immediately? Perhaps on a flight tonight or early tomorrow. I can call her right now. By 3:30 a.m., Evangeline Rhodes swept into the police station. Despite being in her 70s and having just endured a late-night flight, she carried herself with dignity and purpose. Her silver hair was pulled back in a neat bun, her clothes simple but elegant. "Where is she?" were her first words to Royce, whom she'd never met in person before that moment. Royce led her to the small room where Natalie waited. The girl stood as they entered, her eyes wide as she took in the grandmother she'd never known. "Natalie," Evangeline said, her voice suddenly soft with emotion. "Oh, my dear, you look so much like your father." Natalie hesitated only a moment before crossing the room, allowing herself to be folded into Evangeline's embrace. Over Natalie's head, Evangeline's eyes met Royce's, shining with tears and fierce determination. "Thank you," she mouthed silently. Royce nodded, his own eyes burning. This moment, Natalie finding family she never knew she had, a grandmother reclaiming her lost grandchild, made all the pain of the past months worthwhile. The reunion was brief, interrupted by the necessities of legal paperwork and arrangements. Evangeline was granted emergency temporary custody pending the hearing. She and Natalie would stay at a hotel near the courthouse, with a police officer stationed in the lobby as a precaution. The night's events had drained Royce physically, but rekindled the hope he'd nearly lost. Morning came too quickly. Royce showered and dressed at his apartment, selecting his best suit, the one he'd married Mary in, ironically enough. Dave had instructed him to look his absolute best for the hearing, to present the image of a responsible, stable parent figure. At the courthouse, Royce found Dave waiting with Arlen. The emergency hearing had been set for 9 a.m., and by 8:30, they were settled in the designated courtroom, reviewing their strategy one final time. "Mary doesn't know about any of this," Dave said, arranging documents on the table before him. "She's expecting a standard hearing on the restraining order. When we present the new evidence, it's going to blindside her completely." "Good," Royce said, no mercy in his voice. After seeing Mary strike Natalie, after hearing her cold manipulation, any lingering affection or benefit of the doubt had evaporated. "She deserves worse." "She'll get worse," Arlen assured him. "Once this hits the criminal justice system, she's finished." At 8:50, the courtroom door opened. Evangeline and Natalie entered, both looking remarkably composed despite the minimal sleep. They took seats in the gallery directly behind Royce. 1 minute before 9. Mary swept into the courtroom, her lawyer trailing behind her. She wore a conservative blue dress, her hair pulled back, her makeup subtle, the perfect image of a concerned mother. When she spotted Natalie sitting behind Royce, she stopped short, her composure cracking for an instant before she recovered. "What's she doing here?" she demanded of her lawyer. "And who is that woman with her?" The lawyer, clearly caught off guard, had no answer. Mary's eyes narrowed as she took in Evangeline, recognition dawning on her face. For the first time, Royce saw genuine fear in his wife's expression. "All rise," the bailiff called as Judge Harmon entered the courtroom. The same judge who had granted the temporary restraining order now looked over the assembled parties with a slight frown. "Counsel, I understand there are new developments in this case." "Yes, Your Honor," Dave said, rising. "We have filed a countersuit for defamation, witness tampering, and fraudulent accusations. We have also submitted a motion to dismiss the restraining order based on newly discovered evidence of perjury and child abuse." Mary's sharp intake of breath was audible across the courtroom. Her lawyer leaned close, whispering urgently, but Mary shook her head, eyes fixed on Royce with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "These are serious allegations, Counselor," Judge Harmon noted. "What evidence supports them?" Dave approached the bench, presenting a file of documents and a USB drive. "Your Honor, we have audio recordings from Mrs. Barlow's vehicle in which she admits the abuse allegations are fabricated. We have documentation from a previous divorce showing an identical pattern of behavior. And most significantly, we have video evidence of Mrs. Barlow physically striking her daughter and coercing her to lie about Mr. Barlow in therapy sessions. The judge's expression darkened as he reviewed the materials. When he looked up, his gaze settled on Natalie. "Young lady, are you willing to testify to the authenticity of this video and the events it depicts?" Natalie stood, her voice clear and steady. "Yes, Your Honor. I recorded my mother threatening me and hitting me when I refused to lie about Royce. I'm prepared to testify under oath that Royce Barlow has never abused me in any way." Mary half rose from her seat. "She's lying. Natalie, tell the truth." "Mrs. Barlow," the judge said sharply, "you will remain silent or be removed from my courtroom." Mary subsided, but her eyes burned with rage as she stared at her daughter. Natalie met her gaze steadily, no longer the frightened girl of the previous evening. Given the serious nature of these allegations and the compelling evidence presented, I am immediately rescinding the temporary restraining order against Mr. Barlow, Judge Harmon announced. Furthermore, I am granting temporary custody of the minor child to, he consulted his notes, Evangeline Rhodes, paternal grandmother, pending a full custody hearing. Mary surged to her feet. "You can't do that. She has no right." "Mrs. Barlow," the judge cut in, his voice cold, "I suggest you consult with your attorney about the implications of perjury and child abuse charges before you say another word in my courtroom. This hearing is adjourned until next Monday at 9 a.m., at which time we will address the countersuit and custody arrangements." As the judge departed, Mary turned on her lawyer, berating him in hushed, furious tones. The lawyer, looking increasingly uncomfortable, gathered his papers and began edging toward the exit. Royce felt a hand on his shoulder. Turning, he found Natalie standing beside him, a tentative smile on her face. "We did it," she said. "You did it," Royce corrected. "Your courage made all the difference." Across the courtroom, Mary's gaze locked onto them. For a moment, the mask slipped completely, revealing the cold calculation beneath. Without a word, she stormed from the courtroom, her lawyer hurrying to keep up. "She'll be back," Arlen warned, watching her retreat. "With new lies, new tactics. Let her try," Evangeline said, joining them. "She's not facing a vulnerable man alone anymore. She's facing all of us together." Royce nodded, feeling the truth of those words settle into his bones. Mary had nearly destroyed him by isolating him, by attacking when he was unaware and unprepared. But that advantage was gone now. Whatever came next, he wouldn't face it alone. The weekend passed in a strange limbo. Roy spent most of it with Natalie and Evangeline, helping them navigate their new relationship while preparing for Monday's hearing. They visited the Denver Botanical Gardens, took a drive into the mountains, shared meals in restaurants, normal family activities that felt extraordinary after months of separation. Natalie bloomed in Evangeline's presence, soaking up stories about her father that Mary had never shared. Frank Rhodes emerged from these tales not as the irresponsible gambler Mary had described, but as a flawed man who'd loved his daughter fiercely and fought to protect her until his death. He would write you letters, Evangeline told Natalie as they sat in a mountain cafe. Even when he wasn't allowed to see you, he wrote you a letter every week. He saved them all, hoping someday you'd read them. "Do you still have them?" Natalie asked, eyes bright with unshed tears. "Everyone, in a cedar chest at home. When this is all over, they're yours." Monday morning arrived with a sense of foreboding. The courtroom was packed. Mary's accusations against Royce and the subsequent countersuit had become the talk of their community. Mary entered with a new lawyer, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit. Gone was the conservative dress of the previous hearing, replaced by a tailored pantsuit that projected authority and confidence. She took her seat without acknowledging Royce, her expression composed and determined. Judge Harmon called the court to order, his demeanor stern as he surveyed the assembled parties. "Before we begin, I want to be clear that I expect decorum from everyone present. The allegations in this case are serious, and I will not tolerate outbursts or attempts to influence the proceedings. Is that understood?" Murmurs of assent rose from the gallery. Mary's new lawyer stood, adjusting his tie. Your Honor, if I may, I'd like to address the court regarding the evidence presented at the emergency hearing. You are, the judge inquired. Gerald Hoffman, representing Mrs. Barlow. I've recently taken over her case. Proceed, Mr. Hoffman. Thank you, Your Honor. We contend that the video presented by the minor child was taken out of context and does not represent the full interaction between mother and daughter. Furthermore, the audio recordings from Mrs. Barlow's vehicle were obtained illegally and should be inadmissible. Dave rose, his expression one of controlled irritation. Your Honor, Mr. Barlow owns the vehicle in question and installed the audio system himself. The recordings were made automatically by the system, not through any deliberate attempt to eavesdrop. As for the video, the minor child is prepared to testify under oath to its authenticity and context. The judge nodded. I've reviewed the relevant statutes regarding the recordings, Mr. Hoffman, and find them admissible under the circumstances. As for the video, we'll hear testimony from the minor child herself. Ms. Natalie Rhodes, please approach the stand. Natalie stood, her face pale but composed. She walked to the witness stand and was sworn in, her voice steady as she promised to tell the truth. Ms. Rhodes, the judge began, please tell the court about the video recording you made of your mother. Natalie took a deep breath. I made the recording because I was afraid. My mom had been pressuring me for weeks to lie about Royce Mr. Barlow, to say he'd touched me inappropriately or said things that made me uncomfortable. I kept refusing, and she got angrier each time. Why did you feel the need to record the conversation shown in the video? Because no one believed me when I told them what was happening. Dr. Warner, my therapist, always sided with Mom. He'd twist whatever I said to make it sound like I was hiding something or in denial. I needed proof, and the physical violence shown in the video was that an isolated incident. Natalie hesitated, glancing at her mother, who stared back with cold eyes. No, Your Honor. It wasn't the first time she'd hit me. Usually, it was when I defended Royce or refused to go along with what she wanted me to say. Hoffman approached for cross-examination, his manner deceptively gentle. Natalie, you've been through a difficult time, haven't you? Yes, sir. And during difficult times, emotions can run high. Memories can become confused. Isn't that possible? Natalie's eyes narrowed slightly. My memories aren't confused, Mr. Hoffman. Let me ask you this. Isn't it true that your mother has been your primary caregiver your entire life? That she's made sacrifices for your well-being, put your needs above her own? She took care of me, yes. But Royce has been just as much a parent to me for the past 8 years. Hoffman changed tack. Natalie, have you spoken with your mother since the emergency hearing on Friday? No. Has anyone discouraged you from speaking with her? No, I've chosen not to. And in that time, you've been staying with a woman who was a stranger to you until a few days ago. Is that correct? Natalie's chin lifted. I've been staying with my grandmother. Your grandmother. Hoffman repeated, a note of skepticism in his voice. A woman your mother apparently had good reasons to keep away from you. Objection, Dave called. Counsel is testifying and making unsubstantiated claims. Sustained, the judge ruled. Mr. Hoffman, confine yourself to questions. Dave called Wade Temple next. The tall, dark-haired man with an artificial tan moved with casual confidence to the witness stand. As he was sworn in, his eyes darted to Mary, who glared back with unmistakable fury. Mr. Temple, Dave began, how long have you known Mary Barlow? About 8 months. And what is the nature of your relationship? We are involved. Romantically. When did this romantic involvement begin? Wade hesitated, glancing again at Mary. About 7 months ago. A ripple of whispers spread through the gallery. 7 months ago, Royce and Mary had still been married, still living together as husband and wife. Mr. Temple, did Mrs. Barlow ever discuss making false allegations against her husband to improve her position in the divorce? Wade's eyes flicked to Mary, then away. Yes, she did. Said it was the fastest way to get what she wanted. Said judges always side with the mother if abuse is mentioned. And did she ask you to participate in this deception in any way? She wanted me to testify that I'd seen Royce be controlling, aggressive. Said I could say I witnessed it at a party or something. even though I'd never met the guy. Mr. Temple, why are you testifying today? Detective Morales approached me, said they had recordings of conversations between Mary and me that implicated us in perjury and witness tampering. Said I could cooperate or face charges. And what did these recordings contain, Mr. Temple? Conversations about the divorce strategy. Mary talking about coaching Natalie to lie. Plans for what we'd do with the settlement money. Wade looked down at his hands. And some stuff about Natalie's father's accident that didn't sound right. When the recordings were played in court, Mary's voice filled the room, crystal clear as she discussed manufacturing abuse allegations with Wade. The second recording captured her threatening the therapist, explicitly asking him to find evidence that didn't exist. But it was the third recording that sent shockwaves through the courtroom, Mary casually implying her involvement in Frank Rhodes' fatal accident, followed by Wade's appreciative whistle. When the recordings ended, the silence in the courtroom was absolute. All eyes turned to Mary, who sat rigid in her chair, her face a mask of fury and defeat. Her lawyer appeared stunned, clearly hearing some of these revelations for the first time. Your Honor, Dave said into the silence, the prosecution rests. The judge turned to Hoffman. Counselor, does the defense wish to present any witnesses or evidence at this time? Hoffman leaned toward Mary, their whispered conference intense and brief. When he straightened, his expression was grim. Your Honor, given the evidence presented today, Mrs. Barlow would like to request a continuance to consult with new counsel. New counsel? The judge repeated, eyebrows raised. This is the second time in less than a week that Mrs. Barlow has changed attorneys, Mr. Hoffman. I understand, Your Honor, but in light of certain revelations today, I feel there may be a conflict of interest in my continued representation. The judge's expression hardened. Mr. Hoffman, are you withdrawing from this case? Yes, Your Honor. Effective immediately. Mary sat alone now, abandoned by her second lawyer in the space of days. Very well, the judge said. Mrs. Barlow, you have the right to seek new counsel. However, given the serious nature of the evidence presented today, I am not inclined to grant a lengthy continuance. This court will reconvene on Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. You are advised to have secured representation by that time. As the judge rose to leave, Mary finally snapped. This is a setup, she shouted, rising to her feet. Those recordings are fake. My daughter's been manipulated. Mrs. Barlow, the judge warned, control yourself or you will be held in contempt. You're all against me, Mary continued, her voice rising. You have no idea what he's really like. None of you do. Bailiff, the judge ordered, remove Mrs. Barlow from my courtroom. 2 days later, they returned to court. Mary, now represented by a third lawyer, seemed subdued, her earlier fire banked to smoldering embers. Dave approached the bench. Your Honor, we have one final piece of evidence to present. During our investigation, we discovered that Mary Barlow never had full legal custody of Natalie following her divorce from Frank Rhodes. Mary's head snapped up. That's absurd. I've been her sole guardian since Frank died. Mrs. Barlow, you'll have your chance to respond, the judge warned. Continue, Mr. Reynolds. Thank you, Your Honor. Dave produced a document from his file. This is the final custody agreement between Mary Sanderson, as she was then known, and Frank Rhodes. It grants Mary primary physical custody, but specifies joint legal custody, with Frank retaining decision-making authority regarding Natalie's education and health care. Upon Frank's death, this authority would legally transfer to his next of kin in this case, his mother, Evangeline Rhodes, unless specifically overridden by a new court order. Our investigation has revealed that Mrs. Barlow never filed for such an order, effectively meaning that Evangeline Rhodes has retained partial legal custody of Natalie since Frank's death 9 years ago. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Mary stood frozen, her face ashen. Furthermore, Dave continued, we have documentation showing that Mrs. Barlow deliberately concealed this fact during her marriage to Royce Barlow, presenting herself as Natalie's sole legal guardian when authorizing him to act in parental capacities at school and medical facilities. This is outrageous, Mary sputtered. I have full custody. Frank signed away his rights. Do you have documentation to that effect? the judge asked. Mary hesitated. Not with me, no. But it exists. Your Honor, Dave interjected, we have subpoenaed all court record from Arizona regarding custody arrangements between Mary and Frank Rhodes. No such document exists. The judge reviewed the papers Dave had submitted, his expression grave. This appears to be in order, Mr. Reynolds. Mrs. Barlow, do you wish to challenge the authenticity of this document? Mary seemed to deflate before their eyes, the fight draining out of her. No, Your Honor. In that case, the judge said, this court recognizes Evangeline Rhodes's legal standing regarding the minor child. This significantly impacts any custody determinations going forward. After a brief recess, Mary and her new lawyer, Dave, and the judge conferred at the bench. When they returned to their tables, the judge cleared his throat. In light of the evidence presented and the legal complexities that have emerged, Mrs. Barlow has proposed a settlement. Mr. Reynolds, please articulate the terms for the record. Dave stood. Your Honor, Mrs. Barlow has agreed to withdraw all allegations against my client, Royce Barlow. She acknowledges that these allegations were without foundation. In exchange, Mr. Barlow will not pursue criminal charges for the false allegations and witness tampering. However, Dave continued, this does not impact any pending investigation by law enforcement regarding Mrs. Barlow's potential involvement in the death of Frank Rhodes, which is outside our client's control. Regarding custody of the minor child, Mrs. Barlow acknowledges Evangeline Rhodes's legal standing and agrees to a custody arrangement wherein primary physical custody will transfer to Royce Barlow, with Evangeline Rhodes retaining her legal rights. Mrs. Barlow will have supervised visitation rights at the discretion of Mr. Barlow and Mrs. Rhodes. Finally, regarding the financial settlement, Mrs. Barlow will vacate the family residence within 30 days. Ownership of the house will transfer to Mr. Barlow in exchange for a lump sum payment of $50,000. Mr. Barlow retains full ownership of his business. Each party will retain their personal property and separate financial accounts. No alimony will be paid by either party. The judge nodded, making notes. Mrs. Barlow, you understand and agree to these terms? Mary stood, her face a mask of control. Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Barlow. Royce rose. Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Rhodes, as a party to the custody agreement, do you also agree to these terms? From her seat behind Royce, Evangeline spoke clearly. I do, Your Honor. And the minor child, Natalie Rhodes? Given her age, I would like her input on the custody arrangement. Natalie stood, shoulders straight. I want to live with Royce, Your Honor, and visit my grandmother as often as possible. Very well. The judge set down his pen. I will review the formal settlement agreement when it's prepared. If it reflects the terms stated here today, I am inclined to approve it. This court is adjourned until tomorrow morning at 9, at which time we'll finalize the agreement. As the gavel fell, a collective exhale seemed to pass through the courtroom. The spectators began to file out, buzzing with conversation about the unexpected turn of events. Royce remained seated, processing the outcome. Across the aisle, Mary gathered her things, her movements precise and controlled. When she looked up, her gaze met Royce's. No remorse showed in her eyes, no acknowledgement of the pain she'd caused. Only cold calculation, already focused on whatever came next. Without a word, she turned and walked away, disappearing through the courtroom doors. Royce felt a hand on his shoulder. Natalie stood beside him, her young face solemn. Is it really over? She asked. The legal part, mostly, Royce answered honestly. The rest, that'll take longer. Evangeline joined them, her expression thoughtful. She gave up too easily, she said, watching the door where Mary had exited. That's not like her. She saw the writing on the wall. Dave suggested, gathering his papers. With the evidence we'd assembled, she was facing not just defeat, but potential criminal charges. Maybe, Evangeline conceded, or maybe she's cutting her losses to fight another day. The comment hung in the air, a reminder that Mary's capitulation might be tactical rather than final. But for now, at least, the immediate battle was won. The next morning, the formal settlement was approved. It was victory, yes, but a muted one. The damage Mary had done couldn't be undone by a settlement agreement. No matter how favorable they left the courthouse, reporters clustered on the steps, hungry for details. Dave fielded their questions with practiced ease, providing a sanitized version of the settlement while Royce, Natalie, and Evangeline slipped away through a side exit in the parking lot. Natalie looked up at the clear Colorado sky, breathing deeply. "It feels different," she said, "like I can finally take a full breath." Royce nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. For months, they'd both been living under a cloud of accusations and separation. Now, with custody settled and Mary's lies exposed, that cloud was lifting. "What happens now?" Natalie asked as they reached Evangeline's rental car. "Now," Royce said, "we go home. We figure out our new normal. And we take it one day at a time." It wasn't a perfect answer, but it was honest. The road ahead would have its own challenges, helping Natalie process her mother's betrayal, establishing a relationship between Natalie and Evangeline, rebuilding what Mary had tried to destroy. But they would face those challenges together, as a family formed not by blood, but by choice and loyalty. Some battles were won in courtrooms. But the most important victories would come in the quiet moments ahead, in helping Natalie heal, in rebuilding trust, in creating a home where safety and truth were the foundation. Those were the battles that truly mattered, and Royce was determined to win them all. The days following the court ruling passed in a blur of activity. There were practical matters to attend to: moving Natalie's belongings from Mary's house, enrolling her in therapy with a new counselor, establishing a visitation schedule for Evangeline, who would be returning to Tucson the following week. Mary, true to form, made the process as difficult as possible. She was rarely home during the scheduled times for collecting Natalie's things, leaving them to deal with a house sitter who knew nothing about the situation. Items Natalie requested would mysteriously disappear or be accidentally damaged. School records were suddenly missing. Medical files incomplete. A week after the final hearing, Royce arrived home from the shop to find Natalie and Evangeline in the kitchen, surrounded by old photo albums and shoe boxes filled with letters. "What's all this?" he asked, washing grease from his hands at the sink. "Grandma brought them from Tucson," Natalie explained, her eyes bright with excitement. "Pictures of Dad when he was my age, and letters he wrote her from college." Evangeline looked up from an album, her expression a mixture of joy and melancholy. "I thought Natalie should know where she comes from." "Who she comes from?" The doorbell interrupted their conversation. Royce went to answer it, expecting the pizza delivery they'd ordered earlier. Instead, he found Wade Temple standing on his porch, looking uncomfortable and out of place. "What are you doing here?" Royce asked, making no move to invite him in. Wade shifted his weight, hands shoved in his pockets. "Just wanted to talk to you." "Got a minute?" Royce hesitated, then stepped outside, closing the door behind him. "Talk." "Look, I know you've got no reason to listen to anything I have to say," Wade began, his usual swagger noticeably absent. "But I thought you should know Mary's leaving town. Tonight." "Good," Royce said flatly. "Where to?" "San Diego. She's been planning it for weeks, had an apartment lined up, and everything. But that's not why I'm here." Wade glanced over his shoulder, as if checking to see if they were being watched. "The stuff she said in the car about Frank's accident? It wasn't just talk." "What do you mean?" "She has a box. Keeps it locked in her closet. I got curious one night when she was in the shower, picked the lock." Wade's expression was grim. There were newspaper clippings about the accident, but also a map with the route marked, notes about the road conditions, even a receipt for dinner at a restaurant near the crash site from the night it happened. "She was there," Royce said, the pieces falling into place. "Looks that way." Wade ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know for sure what she did, but whatever it was, she kept souvenirs." "Who does that? Have you told the police?" "Called Detective Morales this morning. Figured I'd tell you directly too." Wade's mouth twisted in a humorless smile. "Consider it my good deed for the decade." Royce called Detective Morales immediately. If Mary was planning to leave town, the police needed to know. The next day, Morales called with bad news. "We missed her," she said without preamble. "By the time we got to her house last night, she was gone." Neighbors said she left with suitcases around 7. What about the box Wade told you about? Did you find it? Gone, Morales said grimly. The closet was empty, the house cleared of anything personal. She planned this carefully, Royce. Probably started packing as soon as the court ruled against her. So she gets away with it, Royce said, the bitterness he'd been suppressing finally seeping into his voice. Again, not necessarily, Morales countered. We've contacted the San Diego police and the Arizona authorities. They're reopening the investigation into Frank Rhodes's death with the new information Wade provided. And if Mary returns to Colorado for any reason, we have grounds to bring her in for questioning. It was something, but not enough. Not nearly enough for what Mary had done. When Royce told Natalie that her mother had left town without saying goodbye, the girl's face showed more resignation than surprise. You think she had something to do with Dad's crash, don't you? That's why the police want to talk to her. Sometimes Royce forgot how perceptive Natalie was, how quickly she connected dots that others might miss. We don't know for sure, he said carefully. But yes, there's some evidence suggesting she might have been involved. If she was, Natalie said slowly, if she did something to Dad. What happens to her? That would depend on exactly what happened and what can be proven after so many years, Royce answered honestly. But it would be serious, Nat, very serious. Natalie nodded, her gaze distant. You know what's strange? I'm not even surprised. Not really. There's always been something missing in Mom. Something that should be there, but isn't. The observation, so simple yet profound, struck Royce with its accuracy. That missing piece, empathy, conscience, whatever you called it, was what had allowed Mary to manipulate and destroy without remorse. 3 months later, Royce stood on the back deck of their new house, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains in shades of gold and purple. It wasn't a large house, but it was solid and welcoming, with enough bedrooms for Natalie and a dedicated guest room for Evangeline's frequent visits from Tucson. The auto shop was thriving again, old customers returning and new ones drawn by Royce's reputation for honest work. The whispers and sideways glances that had followed him during the divorce battle had faded, replaced by the respect he'd earned through his resilience. Natalie stepped out, wrapped in a hoodie against the autumn chill. Dinner's almost ready, she said, coming to stand beside him at the railing. Grandma's adding the final touches to her famous pot roast. I'll be there in a minute, Royce promised. Detective Morales called today, she said after a moment of comfortable silence. While you were at work. Royce turned to her, surprised. What did she want? They found Mom. Natalie's voice was steady, her expression calm. In Mexico. She's been living there under a different name. The news hit Royce with less impact than he would have expected. Mary had haunted the edges of his consciousness for months, her unknown fate a loose thread in the tapestry of their lives. Now that thread was tied off, the mystery resolved. Are they bringing her back? He asked. Natalie nodded. There's an extradition process, but yeah, eventually. They have enough evidence now about Dad's accident. A witness came forward, someone who saw Mom's car on a mountain road that night. How do you feel about that? Royce asked carefully. Natalie considered the question, her gaze returning to the mountains. Relieved, I think, that there might finally be justice for Dad. And she hesitated, searching for the right words. Relieved that it's over. That she can't just disappear and reinvent herself again, find some new person to manipulate. Royce understood completely. It wasn't about vengeance, neither of them was built that way. It was about accountability, about the world making sense again after Mary had turned it upside down with her lies and manipulations that in the warm light of the kitchen. Evangeline moved with practiced efficiency, setting the table while simultaneously monitoring something that smelled delicious on the stove. She looked up as they entered, her shrewd eyes taking in their expressions. So, she said, you told him about Mary. Natalie nodded, helping herself to a dinner roll from the basket on the table. He took it well. Of course he did, Evangeline replied, giving Royce an approving nod. He's made of sturdy stuff, our Royce. Our Royce. The simple phrase warmed him in a way he couldn't quite articulate. After months of being painted as an outsider, an abuser, a threat to the very family he cherished, he was once again part of a we. part of a unit bound by love and respect. Later that night, after Natalie had gone to bed and Evangeline had retired to the guest room, Roy sat alone on the back deck again. The night was clear, stars scattered across the black velvet sky like diamonds on a jeweler's cloth. The same stars had shone down on that night months ago when Mary had suggested an open marriage, setting in motion the events that had nearly destroyed him. He remembered standing in his old backyard, anger and confusion roiling inside him as he tried to make sense of her proposal. How lost he had felt, how betrayed. The man he'd been then seemed distant now, a figure viewed through the wrong end of a telescope. From his pocket, he withdrew a folded piece of paper, the final document from the divorce, declaring him legally single again. He'd received it in the mail that morning, but hadn't mentioned it to Natalie or Evangeline. It seemed both momentous and trivial, a formal ending to something that had concluded in his heart months ago, that he looked at it one last time, then deliberately tore it into small pieces, letting them flutter from his fingers into the night air like confetti. Not an angry gesture, but a liberating one. The final severing of the bonds that had tied him to Mary and her toxic influence. In "Oh, forgiveness, only peace," the phrase came to him unbidden, a distillation of his journey from victim to survivor. Mary had taken much from him: his trust, his home, months of his life spent fighting her lies. But in the end, she had failed to take the things that truly mattered: his integrity, his relationship with Natalie, his capacity to build something new from the ruins of what had been destroyed. That he had not just survived. He had won. Roy stood, stretching muscles tired from a day at the shop. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges: a complex transmission rebuild waiting at work, a parent-teacher conference at Natalie's school, a promised phone call to Arlen about their planned fishing trip next month. Normal problems, normal pleasures. The stuff of a life reclaimed. He took one last look at the star-filled sky, feeling the cool night air fill his lungs. Then he turned and went inside, closing the door firmly behind him.